Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:57 on May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo, and we are getting ready to have a little bit of a conversation on sponsorship, more than just a sign. Looks like we have a good number of attendees on the call already today, and we should be getting started in a little bit more than 3 minutes. So we'll put you on hold, and we'll get right back to you when we're ready to start. Thanks so much, and um, thanks again for joining us. Good afternoon, everyone. It is just about one more minute until we get started. Looks like we have a good turnout. A couple of the folks that had signed up are already in queue here, so we're going to give it a couple more minutes until we start. Most of you are probably familiar with GoToMeeting, so if you have a question, I have everyone on mute for right now. So if you have a question, please feel free to answer or to raise your hand using the queue, and we'll be getting started in just about a little over a minute. Thanks again for joining us. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean King, and I am the principal of Aspire Arts and Events Consulting. And we're going to take a little bit of a trip down the sponsorship avenue here today. I am happy to be providing a couple of these free webinars, and hopefully we'll have some good interaction and engagement throughout the day. Feel free to raise your hand at any point to ask a question. We have a few folks on the line today, so we do have the ability to answer questions as we go. I also have a couple of built-in slides so that we can kind of clear the decks between segments. So I'm going to give it another minute. There's only about one or two more people who had registered for the session that aren't online. So thanks to everybody for being here on time. Really appreciate it. What we're going to do as a little bit of an overview here today is talk about sponsorship, not some parts at the high level, but we're also going to dig down in a little bit deeper and hopefully give you some ideas and content regarding the selling process, where we are in the maturation of the sponsorship idiom, if you will, and then also a case study or two, a couple of projects that we're working on. So it does look like everyone is on board. So if you have any questions, press the key to raise your hand, and we'll unmute you. As I had mentioned before, we have everybody on mute, so you can have that Cinco de Mayo party going on in the background while we get started here today. So more than just a sign, it's sponsorship for the next 59 or so minutes. So what I'd like to do is start with a slide to kind of talk about sponsorship basics. As I said, I don't want to be too high level, but I do want to make sure there are a couple of people that are new to our sessions here today. So and maybe sponsorship is something that they're tasked with, or it's been added on to their responsibility list as we go. We do a lot of work with arts organizations, and arts marketers sometimes have the ability to touch on sponsorships, but that's kind of left up to the development and the fundraising departments. So hopefully we'll give a little bit of a vocabulary to those folks who are joining us from the arts world. So here we go. What's the definition of sponsorships? For me, it's brands, businesses, and organizations aligning with similar audiences. What I hope you'll take away from today is that there's a great deal of work that goes into sponsorship, and even more importantly, every day is how we work to use sponsorships to deliver on the business objectives of our partners. If there's nothing else that you leave with today's conversation with, I hope that is it. When we're talking about the similar audiences, we're talking about likes in demographics and geography. Basically, it's the ability for us to look at our partners as collaboratives. And in a collaboration type of work. And, I'm proud to say that I'm a card-carrying member of getting out there and rolling up my sleeves and working with sponsorship opportunities on an ongoing basis. Had a sponsorship meeting this morning, even as you will. So what I'm trying to do is be able to engage and take some of these real-life, real-world case studies and share them with you as we do our consulting work with others across the country. So as we talk about those brands and businesses and organizations aligning with similar audiences, what do we do with those funds internally? We're talking about the logistics, programming, and marketing. So again, this is very top level. It's for people who might not have a lot of experience in sponsorship. The monies that are raised, and sometimes that goes to salaries, and sometimes it goes to other things, to trainings and so on and so forth. But what the main three areas are that sponsorship funds usually go to offset are those logistics, programming, and marketing. There's a difference in the world, and this is especially for my nonprofit friends that are out there today, and those in the arts world, that there are philanthropic dollars and there are marketing dollars. Sponsorship usually taps into the marketing dollars. There's something to be sold. There's attention to be raised. There's awareness to be raised. So that's usually where the sponsorship avenue taps into. If it's a new product that's coming online, if it's a new location that's being opened, those are some of the opportunities that sponsorship use, that marketers use sponsorship to further their message. On the philanthropic side, again, this is the arts and nonprofit side of the world. It's more about the feel good. It's not necessarily about the actual deliverable, even though the philanthropic world is getting much more data oriented and outcomes based. And it's not as easy to find those dollars coming from foundations under the quote unquote sponsorship umbrella that don't have outcomes based on it. So again, I think that's hopefully something that everybody will take away from today is data is important. important. Sponsorship can be and should be a part of the programming if it's legitimate. If you think about all the different ways, and this really ties back to what I was mentioning in the original slide of more than just a sign. For so long, signage was it. That's what we did. We were kind of in the banner business, but now it kind of permeates everything that we do. And if you think of I tend to look at the sports world a lot and try to carry some of those initiatives over from the sports world into what we do in arts and events marketing. The ideas and the concepts that are at work there are somewhat the same. They're somewhat similar. So just as NASCAR, you identify all of the logos and everything that goes along with branding in NASCAR. That's the programming, right? That's the cars. That's the excitement. That's everything that goes into it. You wouldn't have it without that sponsorship branding coming together with programming perfectly. While that's not exactly what we can do at every one of our events, I want you to kind of think big picture and start to get inspired by some of these other things that we see. And you wanted to concentrate. My last point on this slide is sponsorship in the guest journey. Journeys is one of those really hot topic discussion points, especially for all of our friends in the advertising agency and marketing agency world. We're talking about the journey of someone, whether it's a user coming to a website, or whether it's a guest coming to a festival or an event or an arts production or exhibition. What's that journey from the point that they leave their automobile or that they get off the bus or they walk into your event and all the way through to the end? What do they see? What do they smell? What do they taste? Well, all of those pieces start to work into this. And what I would like to do is have you concentrate on sponsorship as a part of that overall journey. So it's almost baked in the same way some of your programming is. So those are basics. A quick 5 minutes on that. So as we dig into selling sponsorships, most of us, if not all of us, are tasked with this at some point in our lives. So why should a sponsor be involved in arts, events, and festivals? First of all, culture defines us. It's a phrase that I've been working with a lot lately because it's so inspirational, and it is the point of differentiation between all that we do and what makes us different from others out there that are kind of going after that same sponsorship dollar. There's only so many ways that we can bring culture together and deliver it, and arts. And specifically events and festivals that focus on music or focus on the fine arts or focus on dance, those are great opportunities for us to differentiate ourselves. Arts, events, and festivals showcase the community in the best light. I just had lunch with a friend who's been doing sponsorship and events marketing across the country for many years, and he's always astounded at the number of people that are able to get engaged and get involved in the community to put their best foot forward. So why wouldn't sponsors want to be a part of that? Those are the kind of things that are showcase opportunities that you need to be able to stand on the top of the pinnacle of the mountain and be able to point out those points of differentiation and sell your event and festival as something totally different from everybody else. Your audience is engaged. The community is showing itself off at its best, at its very best. So why not be a part of that? Before the pitch, though, before you go in for that meeting, you need to make sure that your deck is clean and you're set and ready to go. So when you're setting up that hit list, you want to be talking about and asking questions of yourselves: is sponsorship in the brand's DNA? And what do I mean by that? Do they do a lot of sponsorships? Do they do them on a national basis? We can be talking about consumer package industry like a Pepsi or Coke, or is it something new? Is it a business that's been around for a long time and is trying to kick the tires, or is it baked into what they do and the way that they communicate? Are they willing to try try some different ideas, and it's your job, if you're going in there, to differentiate in your mind how you're going to present. It's a different pitch to somebody who has a lot of experience with this and knows what to expect, versus somebody else that you're trying to get to maybe spend some of those dollars in a sponsorship way that they've never done before. Are you, and meaning you and your organization or your event and festival, aligned with the brand? Do you have similarities? Going back to that last slide, are we talking to the same people, of the same geography, of the same demographic makeup, and how is that going to work? Because again, to reinforce my major thought here is that you need to be in the business of providing an opportunity to promote others' products or services. That's what sponsorship's going to do. It's going to allow you to fulfill your mission by hopefully either through in-kind services, volunteering, or financial contributions, be able to reach your goals. So that's what you have to keep in mind there. And then, is there an angle or tie between the brands? Is somebody releasing a new product? Is there a new way or a new service that's coming online in your area that really fits in line with the audience that you're reaching? Sometimes that could be a tagline. Sometimes it could be an ad campaign that really is, it might change year to year, but one year it might align perfectly with what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do with your festival, and the two things can merge. So there's a couple of samples of that I can share with anybody if they want to kind of dig in a little bit more on that particular subject, because it's fascinating as you start to peel back the layers. So the partners' business objectives must be the main goal. That must be what we're having. I should have put it on each one of these slides for you to have a little bit of reinforcement, because I really want you to be able to leave today's little session here with that. So as we move on to a little bit more of selling sponsorships, my icon there says no gold, silver, or bronze. And what does that mean? It's kind of the sponsorship levels there at the bottom of the page. It's about customization. It's about customizing every proposal. The days of saying you get X with the platinum and Y with the gold and Z with the silver level sponsorships, it's not going to cut it anymore, because there's such a vast variety of being able to engage with what's happening. Whether it's social media or whether it's traditional media or whether it's specific programming that you're doing, all of those things kind of roll themselves up, and what's going to work for sponsor A is probably not going to work for sponsor B or sponsor C. And if you take that additional, and far be it from me, I've experienced this all. When you've done a pitch and you've put your best foot forward, and somebody says, well, that doesn't really fit with my business model. It's something that I could have shortcut when I was putting that together. So take that, added a little attention to detail to make sure that you're customizing every proposal. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, the top button there, and the top bullet point, and there are some more questions that you need to be asking yourself even before you get to that level of sponsorship pitch, and that is business to business, or is it business to customer? Depending on your festival, depending on who comes to it, depending who your sponsors are now, depending on who you want your sponsors to be, who those partners are will define how you're going to approach them. So if you're going to be inviting VIP guests to special access, and you know that that's going to connect with certain members of the business community, that might be a really great B2B situation. If you're a a chamber of commerce, or somebody who's engaged with a city municipal government, or your convention and visitors bureau. You're thinking about to the masses. You are really in the business to consumer world, so you need to focus your partnerships on things that are less specific than business ideas and business concepts. You're talking about things that are going to get sold in supermarkets and purchased at local retailers. So the next step is what data is needed. What data do you need to be able to go into your meetings? And then the second part to that is what data is needed to be collected as you go along, and as you try to provide results on the investment and return on the investment of your partner. What's the data that they're looking for that's going to drive? I have a case study that we'll talk about in a little bit that shows you how that sometimes it always works. Sometimes it doesn't always work in our favor. And then how will success be determined? Get that up front, and that's basic sales 101. But I just want to reaffirm it to those of you on the call that might be just testing the waters here for the first time. Make sure it's clear. Don't worry about it. You want to. It's a much better to have that conversation sitting in a nice air-conditioned office, talking about what we're going to do and what we're going to accomplish, than standing there at the end of the night, dripping sweat, or in a rainstorm, realizing, we tried but we didn't. We weren't on the same page. So. Last point on this slide is the maturation of the industry. This isn't just about the signage. This just isn't about banners anymore. We must provide an excellent point of differentiation for ourselves, and the relationships that we build with our partners are going to provide the point of differentiation between them and their customers. You need to be thinking as much of the end user in this case, which is not only your guest, but also your partner's customer. And that's a key to all of this. So a couple of quick things that I find really handy for a specific project that I'm working on right now. We're talking about category exclusivity. I know sometimes that's a challenge. Communities are sometimes set up that you can't do that. There are deep ties between, let's say, different real estate agencies or different insurance agencies, and that prevents this from happening. But I do say when you have that ability to maybe charge that premium for the category exclusivity, it cleans things out a little bit better, and it makes you be a little bit more focused. So that's a key topic as far as I'm concerned when we're pitching. And we're putting together that original deck. And the top categories for sponsorship, this comes out of IEG reporting, and who is spending the money and how much are they spending. These are your top 12. We're talking about banks and financial institutions. We're talking about obviously automobile manufacturers as well as dealers. That there is a point of differentiation there. The beverage consumer product industry, beer, wine, and spirits, for those of you having large festivals that cater to a more adult crowd. Healthcare, clearly on the both on the insurance side and on the provider side. Mobile, credit cards, which kind of tie into the bank financial piece, insurance, fashion, hospitality, fuel, energy, and real estate. So as you're putting together your hit list and who you want to go after and talk to, there are 12 starts. There are a lot. We could go through this over and over and over again and come up with another 12 or another 24 on top of this. But these are the key areas that I think you can stake a claim to and start working on if you haven't already. So there are some challenges that come up with selling sponsorships, and one is brand managers. They are a challenge. They change so very often. They're great people, but the nature of the beast. They're somewhat like development people in the nonprofit world. They tend to change extremely fast. So you could be building a lot of groundwork with them, and if you don't cut through, and you don't make that impression, just wait a little while, maybe a year or 18 months, and somebody else is going to be in that position, maybe 2 years. So brands and objectives are sometimes unaligned. Don't force the proverbial square peg into the round hole. Sometimes the perfect match isn't. That's what my case study is going to talk about in a little bit. And then how do you leverage your brand to drive more traffic and sell more widgets? Interestingly, as I was searching for a good widget to put on this graphic, widgets mean something totally different these days. That old axiom of selling more widgets used to be gadgets or small trinkets or whatever. A widget now is what we all know is something that we're applying to our computers or our phones. So fun stuff that we learn as we move along. So I'm going to go. Oh, hang on. This is a chance for me to catch my breath, you to catch your breath. We're about 15 minutes in, and I just wanted to see if there were any questions at this point. Just raise your hand if you have any questions. I must have answered everything you could possibly ever want to know about selling. Actually, I'll use this as a quick little pitch. If you do have questions, this slide deck will be available, and this recording will be available at any point if you want to pull it up or share it with a friend. It's on our website. If you want to reach out to me, my contact information is at the bottom. We'd love to have you follow us at SKingAspire on Twitter. Email me anytime, any question, anywhere, any place. My job is to answer you, and that's sking.aspire@gmail.com. And you can visit our website and take a look at everything else that's going on. So that's my little sponsorship plug. Take a quick sip of water, and we're going to go on to our next piece, which is activation. So signage and presence is key, and it's what's been built on the basis of sponsorship. It's the big tent. It's the branded banner flags. It's all of those things. I'm tremendously in love with the concept of go big or go home. The more opportunity you have to showcase your sponsor, the more opportunity you have to lean into your sponsor and have them say, yeah, we're going to bring out the Humvee. Yeah, we're going to bring out the Clydesdales. Yeah, we're going to bring out the covered wagon. Those are tremendous opportunities for you to build your brand on top of their brand. And if you're bringing in 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, there are a few places that you can do that anymore where people aren't huddled on their screens watching Hulu or Netflix or texting or FaceTiming. FaceTime is a really interesting thing. It's great when people are face to face, and events and I'm sorry, again, on my soapbox here, but events and festivals and the arts are the chance for us to bring everybody together to celebrate that culture. So that's again a chance to amplify not only your brand, but the brand of your partners. Couponing and sampling has been around forever. There's always going to be another flavor of iced tea. There's always going to be a new flavor of Mountain Dew. It seems they're in the middle of a contest right now. It was just in a meeting on Baja Blast versus the Dew or the Pitch Black. So there's always something going on. How do you tie that? How do you tie what's going on in their campaigns with what you're trying to do? Product launches are big. Specifically with cars, they're in a cycle right now where new cars are being introduced, new models of old cars are being introduced. Lincoln, I just learned the other day, is launching three or four new products this fall. Those are all opportunities for you to get out there, stay awake and attention to the business pages, and that'll give you some ideas as to where to go after. Data collection is huge. And how do we engage that data? How do we engage those people to become more how can we share that with our customers and be able to, and our clients, to be able to touch their clients and customers. So data collection is a really important piece. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Engagement, it's about driving conversations, and they're inextricably linked to the program. You want to make sure that the engagement goes as far as the people being able to come to your event and take in sponsorship as an attraction, and the more seamless you make that, the easier it is going to become renewal time. You want to be leveraging assets for exclusive access. That means content and programming. How can you weave, one of those sponsors into the main stage? How can you? And we've seen this done. We've seen it done by, furniture stores that provide the best seat in the house, and I've seen that done with automobile manufacturers as well, where they set the car up in the middle of the concert area, so everybody gets, you have a chance to win a seat there, and the automobile itself gets the main attraction before the concert and certainly during, and then leveraging and creating on-site features. That's another key part to making it part of your programming, making it a part of the overall presentation of what you're doing. The more seamless you make that, the more authentic it's going to be to the customer, which is your guest. So you want to think about authentic ways to make this. So sometimes it's a little kitschy, sometimes it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but the main takeaway here is it would be less effective, and it would be less of an impact if it was just kind of generic and we kind of tried, but if you really put the thought in beforehand, it's going to be exceptional for you. So as we talk about the sponsorship continuum, we'll talk about this just really briefly. Start small. If you're looking at working with a bigger goal in mind, but that sponsor's never been with you before, or it's been a different it's a different brand manager, there's something else going on. Try a pilot project. Sit down, map out what the strategy is for what they want to accomplish. How can you deliver upon that? And start out with a pilot project. I just worked on one of these last year, and we've taken a small one event investment, and it's now blossomed into one small event here on the East Coast. It's now blossomed into a six-figure investment that's going to be at 30 events across the country. So those stories do happen. You have to keep working at them. I worked at it for a long time, but it does happen. You want to build in that activation opportunity so people have the again, it's part of the program. You're not just adding it on. You're giving it a lot of thought, and you're coming away with some great stories and great anecdotes that can feed in with the data to tell your overall story. Personalization and customization is the way of the future. You've seen it with the Coke machine out there that did the specific personalized Coke cans last summer. That's going to be changing. It's going to be augmenting. There's going to be more opportunities, 3D printers. There's going to be, it's not just the photo booth anymore. It's not just the chance to get your photo taken at a site, even though it's a great thing and people, but, selfies and selfie sticks have kind of taken that, away. You don't necessarily have to go to a machine to get your picture taken anymore. And then you want to be working towards your renewal at every step of the way. So, when we're moving forward on activation, I talked a little bit about what does that mean for the sponsor. You need to know that as they look at the investment, and this took a while for me to understand, that it's only the tip of the iceberg for them to get the rights to work with you, and you have to understand that they should be, if they're if they're really committed to success, they should be looking at putting another 25 to 100% into their investment in you. So that means they're going to buy additional ad time to support their presence at your event. They are going to bring in people. They're going to staff it if they're professionally aligned that way, and their workflow is in that concept. There's a lot of different opportunities for them to activate and to leverage upon their investment in you. So when you go in there and you pitch a $25,000 sponsorship, you really have to have in the back of your mind that they're going to be winding up spending somewhere around $35,000 to $50,000 on this whole thing. Don't let that scare you. But if it's going to work, the more effort and the more energy and the more budget that they put into it, the better it's going to work out in the end for you, and that renewal is going to happen. But they have to have the keys first, and the key that you hold is basically those rights to have them be aligned with you, to be able to promote alongside of you, and to obviously be on site. When you're looking at the last question, and that is how have we moved the needle, I'm back to business objectives. I'm talking about the collection of the data. How is that being done? Because not everybody's going to be selling particular things. Not everybody's going to be couponing or sampling or having that. But if somebody is running that contest or having a text to win contest on your property or throughout your event, what's going to happen with all that information? How's that going to be used in the future? You need to be asking those questions and pushing that envelope, because it means that you're engaged. You're a part of the success of all of this. And what really starts to happen is when you start to look at 12 different sponsors or more, can you customize each one of these? I think you can customize them, but can you be as knee deep in the weeds with each one of them? Probably not. And those are the cases where you need to do the thinking about who's going to be the premier or premium sponsor as you move forward, and give them all of that service as we go. So I'm going to take another quick break. That's my little 5 or 10 minutes on activation. If there's any questions, just raise your hand and I'll be happy to answer. Or of course, you can certainly just type it out. Let me just check the screen here, see if anybody's. No, it looks like we're going good. All right. So with that, going to go to next slide. And the next section of our presentation is about collaboration, and I'm big on collaboration. I think it is it's the future of where we're going, and it makes return on investment greater for people, and it sometimes shortens the workload on for a couple of us. So what I wanted to talk to here is. Hang on real quick. It looks like I have a question that popped up. Hang on. Oh, sorry. It looks like Debbie just wrote in, how do you educate sponsors on activation? I think from the time you sit down in the in your first pitch meeting, you need to know that you need them to know that you're going to be engaged in this process all the way, and that activation is the number one concept to what you're trying to do. So what you need to be able to do is lay out what your thoughts are on where they're going to set up, how they're going to set up, what are some collection ideas, if it's data, how we're going to sample, where we're going to place their car, those types of things, so that you're forward thinking. On the other side, maybe do some research. If you're talking to a specific sponsor, they're involved with other festivals, or they're involved in some other things across the country or regionally. Do some of that homework so you have a little bit of example of what they do and also of what their competition does. As I said, there's a lot of ways that people have learned how to activate one off, one after another, and they've kind of just done the same thing more times than not. I would ask that you would probably. I wouldn't ask. I would recommend that you want to have your best ideas, informed by all of the things that you've seen or that you've read or that you've experienced, and fold it in and lead them, educate them as to how important activation is. If you're dealing with an agency, or if you're dealing with a main or a larger entity, they're probably going to be very well versed in this. They're going to know what to expect. They're going to know right down to how many people need to be there, how long they need to be there, how many folks they're going to talk to. All of those things are going to kind of come along. So I hope that answers your question. And if not, feel free to shoot me a quick email and follow up on that. So thank you, Debbie, for the question. Back to the collaboration, piece here. We'll just take a quick sip of water. So collaboration is two prongs for me. One is collaboration between properties. That means if there are other venues, or if there are other sponsorship, or if there are other events that you are promoting, say you're doing a spring event and a fall event, think of them kind of in tandem. Or if it is the case, in a project that I'm working on right now, where we're working on collaboration between all of the arts organizations in a city in Pennsylvania, where we're pulling together all of those assets because it allows us to do a better job pooling that number of audience members than if each one went individually. If each organization and festival and event went independently, and we're looking at it at a higher level. So rather than going the way that I explain it is, instead of going to the automobile dealer, we're going to the regional automobile manufacturing or manufacturer marketing departments. So those are opportunities, and it all has a lot to do with geography. In this particular city, it's the third largest city in the state, but it's nestled between New York City and Philadelphia. So we're trying to carve out our own niche and build upon what's happening in this city, where there's a tremendous amount of folks. There's about 750,000, 800,000 people in the general area that we can draw from, and of that, a good portion of them are involved in arts events and festivals. So what we're doing is we're looking at a higher level, but by pooling the collaboration of the arts organizations, events, and festivals, it's creating a whole new opportunity for us. So you have impact with aggregated total audiences. You're able to leverage contacts and brands, and you're creating this new property. So if the art museum and the symphony and the theater and the blues festival and the jazz festival all went independently, they probably wouldn't get very far, or they would get where they've gone so far. So what we're looking at now is when we pool those plus all of the other activities that are going on in the area, we're getting in a really, really great really great traction with people that are looking at investing a good amount of money to help move this programming forward. The other is collaboration by sponsors, and those collaborations by sponsors are again, we're going back to leveraging your brand to your partner's customers. So that's the manufacturer. If you're talking at a manufacturer level, they obviously are going to be working through a retail outlet of some sort. Hopefully it's not Amazon.com. As convenient as it is, it certainly has taken away the personalization and the personalized touch that we have at going to our local retailer to buy something. But neither here nor there. We have an example of this from a specific event that we did a couple of years ago, where we wanted to attract attention, and we knew that we had an outlet through a retailer. that they were getting, a 500 people into their stores on a daily basis. And what we wanted to be able to do was utilize that relationship that they have with their customer to win a VIP access to our event. So we built we had a long-standing relationship with the manufacturer. We went to them and said, "Who's your best customer?" Their best customer they introduced us to their best customer in that region, and we were able to put together this VIP package, which allowed them to reach 3 or 4 of their business objectives. Not only were they able to talk to their core customer, but they were also able to talk to decision makers and influence influencers, if you will, in that. So you want to be looking at that manufacturer, retailer, manufacturer, and event triangle, if you will, and how can all those three things work? It was a win-win-win situation, and we basically exceeded all of our expectations by doing that. So the last point on this page is my pure belief that the marketing channels, especially with some of the consumer product industry, those channels are extremely valuable. You want people to come to your event, so how do you get to the most amount of people? And we're not talking about targeting now. We're just talking about wide out. How many people do we get to come to our events? And what I strongly suggest is that you look at those different channels, and it's one of those things that maybe it's not cash that's involved, but maybe it's exposure. Maybe it's all of those other things that can get added in that are going to allow you to all those other things that are going to allow you to be able to promote and broadcast your message using their channels and their brands. Think about it as one of our beverage companies being able to promote your event through their channels at the supermarket level, at the convenience store level. Those are the kind of things. Those are the kind of challenges that we have. So that's an idea. Now, I'm gonna scroll right on because we're about 40 minutes in, and I have a little bit to go on. This is a key slide. I hope it works for everybody here. What we talk about when we're talking about valuation is, how much do I charge? How many times have you sat there saying, "Oh my, I'm a little worried. I don't know if I'm charging enough. I don't know if I'm charging too much." There are some basic parameters you can use. So my first step here is you want to have your attendance statistics at the ready. Some of those are approximations and estimates, but you have a pretty good idea as to what a great day is, what an okay day is, what the total would be for the event and the festival. So that kind of starts the ball rolling. When we're talking about gross impressions, we're talking about all the different things that go involved in here. Some of our print materials, such as the brochures that you print, and the posters that you print, and the program guide, if you will. So those are some of the things. Specifically with print advertisements, there's not necessarily a cost associated with it until you break down all the pieces of what it takes for you to put that program together. But when we're talking on the broad scale of brochures, rack cards, those types of things, you want to assign a value to those. You want to assign a value to signage impressions. While I say it's not about banners, it's still about banners. There's still going to be a lot of people that are engaged and see what's going on through that banner and those type of visual impressions. Promotional mentions, sometimes that's if you're in a seated facility, that's one thing. If you're just mentioning it at the introduction of a concert or something like that, public address announcements. Also, radio spots. How do we want to look at that and incorporate that? Social media impressions, something that it's constantly building. You're going to be building You're going to building sponsorships around your social media campaigns. Digital website and email, that means visits, it means clicks, it means opens, it means gross impressions. How many times are those things seen? So if you look to the right, you'll see that we've broken down each one of the medium, and then the value as associated cost per impression. So if we're looking at print advertisements, our cost is what our cost is. That program costs $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 to print. We know that a certain page in that book is going to be worth X. That's how we assign that value. So when we start to look at print materials, we're talking about a penny of an impression. So if you're doing about X amount of rack cards, you're gonna cost that out at a penny each. You're going to value that at. Banners and signage, that's 2 cents. So there is a little bit more value, a little bit more worth there. Public address announcements, like I said, radio station announcements, those types of things, anytime they're being mentioned, we tend to value those at a penny. And then social media and digital is probably at about half of a penny, just because the volume is so high. There's some argument back and forth. We've done some research. We've read some studies, and there's really no real good rule of thumb, but these tend to work for us when we're putting this together. And then I usually factor by 2. I usually say, to be fair, let's go through all of this, because this can add up to a lot. If you're doing your job in marketing, there is a lot of impressions going on. So you're going to divide that by 2. What's missing from this valuation is that intrinsic factor, the brand. What do you bring? And that's one of those gut feelings that you have to work through, and you have to be able to identify where you're at on the continuum. What are the competitors charging? If there's a like festival, 100 miles away or 50 miles away, where are they structured, and on the cost continuum. So valuation is a tricky part. I tried to give you the basis so that you can kind of start to build, but when you start to get into the other 2 things, which are entitlement rights and presenting rights, there's a lot of different levels for you to look at there. Entitlement rights are, it's the Ford festival, or it's the Ford Food Festival, or when you start to look at presenting rights, you're looking at the Ford the Ford country stage, where you have all your country music acts, or you have your T-Mobile hip hop stage. So those are the type of things when you start to put your values together. You need to look at everything, and that's actually what my next slide is to talk a little bit about how do you conduct an audit or an assessment. You need to take a day and roll it all out. What is everything has a potential sponsorship opportunity associated with it? How much can we charge, and where does all of this live? And you don't sell yourself short. That you want to be talking about everything from your stationery and your business cards and your website and your emails and your marketing campaign and your rack cards and your billboards and your radio and your social. It adds up. But then you get to the day of event, and then you're starting to think about everything that it can be. Is it the Toyota parking lot? Is it the Toyota parking lot, which used to be the red lot, and the Ford parking lot, which used to be the blue lot? Everything has a potential of being sponsored, and if you get really creative, you can tie it into what you're trying to do as the takeaway for your festival. So what are all of your assets? What are the value of those assets? What resources do you put towards activating and building the relationship for the long term? Are you looking at hiring somebody to handle this on an ongoing basis? Sometimes that's a commission / salary piece. whatever your strategic plan, whatever your plan for the future has, I think we'll go back to answering that question. And then what is the value of a comprehensive relationship? You want to have a 20, well, maybe not a 24/7, but you want to have a 365-day relationship with your sponsor. You don't want to have a day of event, and you don't want to have one day a month out and the day of event. You want to have an ongoing dialogue, an ongoing conversation, because that relationship can grow and blossom and be everything that you want it to be, above and beyond what it is right now. So I'm going to skip over the question and answer right now, so we have a little bit of time at the end. Want to go through a really quick 5-minute case study with the Army. I was fortunate enough to work on a national program with them 2 years ago, and learned a lot about my client, and learned a lot about what it takes to kind of pull this off. We were fortunate to work with an advertising agency and engagement firm that's one of the top 3 in the world, and they had great, stellar people on board with them, and obviously with the military. So for this particular event or set of events, we were working within the high school marching band area. One of our clients does a lot of events across the country, and we thought it was a natural fit. The fact that, and actually I'm going to scroll ahead real quick. The case study, here of this Army activation is better students make better soldiers. That was our pitch. We know that musical folks, or students who participate in music, are higher accomplished. Generally speaking, they score better on tests. One of our pitches is that they already know how to march in line. So that kind of gets a lot of play. So the idea was we were having major events across the country, and the Army could come out and provide a great opportunity for them to interact and engage, tell the students and the parents what is new in the Army, and why the Army is an option, whether it's going into Army music, or whether it's becoming a soldier for a little while and then going to pay for college, or whether it's you want to make a career of the Army, because it's a much more technical approach. As you'll see, it's much more about STEM than it is about marching, which STEM has now become STEAM. Don't know, but that's a good thing. We're heading in the right direction. So the whole concept came down to, was driven by numbers. We were providing access to upwards of 50,000 students, and they came loaded for bear. So I'm going to skip back to here are 3 kind of quick takeaways that what a sponsor might be looking for and how they engage with you. Not saying it's the Army, but you want to be thinking about these lines. So they rolled into town with a 25-foot truck, unloaded it the day before each event, with as you saw, a 50 by 50 footprint of tents and interactive engagements. Their number one thing was to survey students, to capture their information ahead of time, and then to give them a post engagement survey. So they would have 16 iPads on hand that the kids would fill out. Very interesting here. This is another one of those pieces that I hope you can kind of take away. What they were trying to do was determine on site, where they could funnel these kids. So they would give them these armbands. That was actually one of the giveaways, and they were really fashionable wristbands. But they had this other ability for the person who was handling the engagement to look and say, oh, that's a yellow, that's a priority 1. We want to pay attention to them. Priority 3 was a white band. Okay, not so important. If somebody was wearing a black band, there at the bottom, they would have some kind of engagement. So you need to be thinking, along the lines of, what are we doing? Back to what are we doing to get to the business objectives? What are we doing to support this from happening? So how can we learn these techniques? So if it's somebody who's whether it's a car dealer, I keep coming back to them, but it's top of my mind right now that there's a way to pre-qualify that person, or whether it's an insurance company, and they're looking to pre-qualify whether somebody's a home buyer or whether somebody's homeowner or whether somebody's a renter. If you can provide this is how these agencies work. What can we learn from them? So, this was an example of their 50 by 50 footprint. It was an obstacle course. They had 6 different engagements that people could do. Some of it was about team building, and what they were doing along the way was creating ways to weed the leaders out. The better students, so that they could have a more in-depth conversation with them. So I'm not saying that we can all go to this level of detail, but these are the types of things that if you can be thinking from your point of view, just at a very high level, how are we going to be able to, one, collect that data? How can we support that effort? And then what can we do with that data once we have it? And then how can we turn that into that business, reaching that business objective at the end? So really an important takeaway. My takeaway from this is that we learn more about our business. And basically what wound up happening is we didn't get to renew the sponsorship because we found out that the majority of students in marching bands are freshmen and sophomores, and by the time they get to a junior senior level, they've either opted out of marching band or they just don't do it anymore. So sometimes you get some of the answers that you're not really counting on. So the takeaway is, know what is being measured. Be a part of the planning. We would have weekly calls with the Army to figure out what was going on next and understand how you can drive the results. So with that kind of brings to a conclusion our presentation. I kind of went a little bit shorter on a couple of those in order to leave some time here at the end for questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or if you want to just send me a quick note like Debbie did earlier. As I said, I hope I'm pretty clear that being a sponsor means that they're investing in you and they're investing in your programming and your festival. And it's really important that you keep in mind that it's up to you to help them get to their business objectives. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll do a little pitch here real quick that we do have our next webinar upcoming. It's going to be about branding, and it is scheduled for Friday, May the 20th at 1 p.m. It's usually we do these on Thursdays, but that is a specific event that the Michigan Festival and Event Association, along with Indiana and Florida Festival Event Associations, are kind of combining, and we're producing that. So I think a lot of the folks on this call today were from the festival world, and we certainly do appreciate your help here today and joining us. And if you would like, when you sign off, I would certainly appreciate if you fill out the form. It's a quick survey, helps us sharpen our skills, do a little bit better in presenting ideas and concepts that are important to the festivals and events industry. So with that, if there's any other questions, going once. It looks like Looks like we're good. So I certainly appreciate everybody's time, and hopefully you'll sign up for us and stay online with our newsletter as we continue to go. If you have any questions at all regarding sponsorship, please feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions at any time. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on May 20th when we talk about branding. Have a great day.